Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining us for what will be a very informative and honest webinar on mental health. I'm delighted to share that our webinars are interactive. So just to talk you through a few of the functions of the platform, we have a chat function on the right-hand side. That's available here for you to post comments and direct questions to our panel, which I'll pose to the panel throughout and towards the end of the webinar. We'll also be using poll questions, so you'll be able to vote and give your opinion on different questions that our panel are posing to you. And we will be sharing the slides and some helpful resources and signposting with you during and after the webinar, which is also recorded. So all of these things will be really helpful as a reference point for you to come back to. My name is Yvonne Harrison. I'm a non-exec director for Y Sports, and I'm delighted to be hosting today's webinar for you. Now, we have a range of guest speakers, and they will be sharing their insights, data, and personal stories to give you a really rounded perspective on mental health and the associated benefits of physical activity here today. Let's kick things off then with a poll question and check everybody's comfortable with how to use that. So given that we are on a mental health webinar, let's ask a question which is appropriate for everybody, which is, how are you feeling today? So if you can vote now within the questions, if you're unsure, just click on the poll and then vote there how you are feeling. We'll see the results of that shortly. Now, just to say, this is not a test. No one can trace any vote back to you, so please just be honest. I know that we all have daily highs and lows, particularly at the moment during the pandemic, and people will be feeling anxious as the tiers are announced today as well. We know our feelings come and go for a whole range of reasons. I think what's key is that we acknowledge how we are feeling and try to be as honest with ourselves and others as we possibly can. So let's have a look there. How are we doing? So just 5% of us not having a great day today. So hopefully this will bring you some comfort. Hopefully you have people you can talk to as is needed throughout the day. People in the mid-range really so-so and absolutely understandable, and we also have some people feeling really great today, so hopefully they can share their energy with the rest of us throughout the chat on this webinar. Your mental health is really important to us. You may have experienced trauma or challenging events in your life. So just a trigger warning for people today that parts of this webinar may touch upon topics that you might have experienced yourself, including self-harm, thoughts of suicide or abuse. We want to make sure that you take care of yourself during the webinar. So please, if you need to step out, do so. As I've said earlier, the webinar is recorded, so you can always come back in your own time and view it as you see fit. So let's get started. Firstly, I'd like to introduce to you a great supporter of what we do at Y Sports, Hayley Jarvis, who is the head of physical activity at Mind. Hayley's presentation is going to take you through some of the COVID-related mental health statistics before actually exploring the role of physical activity as part of a coping mechanism for people's well-being, and finishing with some fantastic signposting for further information that you might find useful. So Hayley, over to you.
Hi everyone, and thanks for having me today. Hopefully this is going to work okay, because I couldn't see the slides a second ago. So yeah, I'm Hayley Jarvis and I'm proud to be the head of physical activity at Minds. So we're a mental health charity and we stand shoulder to shoulder with people experiencing mental health problems to fight for access to better services and support. So many of you will know we work across England and Wales. We've got a footprint of around 120 local Minds across the country. We're also on the high street. We provide information, we campaign for access to better services, and then we deliver programs in the heart of communities. So as Yvonne said, we're briefly going to talk about the impact that COVID's had on our mental health this year, and really look at that relationship between physical activity and mental health and how we get that messaging right, but also look at some of the resources and tools that are out there to support you as well. Okay, so it's been quite a year, hasn't it? Frazzled, overwhelmed, exhausted, emotional roller coaster, always on, surviving. So many words that I've heard people say over the last few months, and you know, it's been unprecedented. And certainly, I don't know about you, I've never used that word so much as this last year. And thinking back to March, having to Google what the word furlough meant, and the world has changed so much in just a short time. It's been a roller coaster and up and down, and I think it's really important just to establish the context of what we're talking about today. So we've all got mental health, just as we've got physical health, and we are on a spectrum from surviving to thriving. So from good mental health to poor mental health, and we all have good days and bad days, and to be honest, we might experience a whole range of emotions in one day alone right now. But really, when bad days turn into bad weeks, that's when it becomes a problem. So when our mental health gets in the way, when it stops us from doing things that we enjoy, when it impacts on our work, our relationships, that's when we might need a bit of extra help and support. So we know mental health problems can be impacted by a whole range of things. So life events, periods of ongoing stress, uncertainty like we're facing right now. But also it's really complex. It's a range of biological, social, psychological environments. Sometimes it just simply happens, and we don't know why. There's not always a cause. But one thing we know is it's been impacted this year like no other. So we know that COVID is going to leave a deep and lasting scar on millions of us in the country. We've sadly seen a tremendous loss of life, the impact of lockdowns, the loneliness, the uncertainty, and the recession will really affect us all. So at the start of lockdown, back in the spring, we saw a real surge of people developing mental health problems for the first time. To start with, people had a real thirst for information, and then we saw people were really starting to struggle. Their life had changed like never before. Suddenly working from home, having to homeschool, not being able to do the things that you enjoy. So we saw a real worrying trend to begin with, that people were struggling for the first time. Fortunately, as this has become our day-to-day life, that's plateaued, and the general public as a whole has started to become far more resilient. We hear about the amazing self-care activities that employers are doing, things that people are doing to socialise differently to help their mental health. However, people with existing mental health problems have told us that their mental health has gotten worse, and that trend is increasing at a really, really worrying rate. Some recent research shows that people with mental health problems are more likely to have COVID, more likely to be hospitalised, and more likely to die from COVID. And what we've seen is the more severe somebody's mental health problem is, the more likely that is to happen. So that's a really concerning trend for us and everyone in the mental health sector right now. It also reinforces some of the staggering existing inequalities that we know. So we know around some of the poor physical health outcomes for people when they're struggling with their mental health. And if you have a severe and enduring mental health problem, you have a shorter life expectancy as a result, because of a range of factors. So not having access to the right services and care, your physical health not being prioritised. So it really sort of indicates the concern that we have for people with existing mental health. The Centre for Mental Health Research, you may have seen it, predicts that a further 8.5 million adults and 1.5 million children and young people are going to require support for their mental health in the coming years. So whilst COVID is an issue in the here and now, and fortunately a vaccine's on the horizon, the impact it has is going to go on for quite some time. I guess the thing is, we're starting to see that impact in the here and now. So back in 2017, 1 in 10 children and young people experience mental health problems. So 1 in 10 only back in 2017. So that was about 3 in every class of 3 young people in every class of 30. Right now, research that came out this summer shows that stat's now 1 in 6 children and young people are experiencing mental health problems. So it's a real concern and time for us to act and kind of do everything we can to support the nation's mental health. So from our research, we've seen particular declines in the mental health of young people, which I've already touched upon, women, disabled people, people living in social housing or shared occupancy, people with nowhere to escape, victims of domestic abuse. We've also seen people with specific mental health problems really struggling during this time. So people with eating disorders have found it really hard to access their usual coping mechanisms, and having to stay at home and being around sort of food and our day evolving around food has been really difficult. People with obsessive compulsive disorder, the nature of the pandemic, the need to wash our hands has really sort of reinforced some of those patterns and rituals. And also people with personality disorders. Our frontline workers, we've all been outside on a Thursday night clapping for the NHS, and you know, hats off to the amazing work frontline staff have been doing during this time. But we've also seen the fragility of their mental health, the extraordinary pressure that they've been under, and that unique set of circumstances that actually they're treating their friends and colleagues for the first time. Never has that happened in this way in terms of the pandemic before. One of the things that we know is that we all cope with our mental health in different ways, and we have some really healthy ways of looking after ourselves and some less healthy ways, and this resonates in lots of us. So through our research, we've seen lots of people have been over or under eating, very common in periods of stress. Alcohol and illegal drug use have been sort of the less healthy coping strategies that people have been telling us about. And worryingly, with children and young people, a third of them have told us that a third of young people with existing mental health problems have told us that they're self-harming as a way to manage those worrying feelings. And obviously that's obviously a huge concern about trying to support them to use other ways to cope with their mental health. We're seeing the impact of lack of access to services. So frontline services have closed or moved to, online or to telephone support, which, let's face it, you know, interacting in this way isn't the same. So it's been a real struggle for people to get the help and support that they need for their mental health. So certainly as mine during the second lockdown, we worked really closely with our local minds to keep services open because many of them are exempt as support groups. Self-stigma, as you'll see up there, is a huge concern for us. So you can see that a third of adults and nearly a quarter of young people didn't access support because they didn't think their issue was serious enough. So we call this self-stigma, when people feel they're unwell enough to get help and support, not feeling like you deserve support. Because we all know that early intervention, the sooner we get help, the sooner we can address the problems in our life, and the better the outcomes we can have. So whether that's in a community setting through a local mind or another mental health organisation or clinical based support, we can prevent those problems from getting worse. So you may have seen that the NHS have just launched a campaign to really encourage people to access those early interventions for their mental health. So it's a bit of a melting pot. It's been a real time of worry, and we've badged it a mental health crisis. We were already sort of seeing tremendous numbers of people struggling with their mental health, and the lack of underfunding for years, chronic underfunding, real inequalities and unrest, and COVID's just added to that. It's really entrenched those inequalities. We're seeing poverty and isolations, and so we are really concerned about the long term. However, it's not all bad news. We know that during this time, some people have really thrived. We've started to normalise the conversation around mental health. We've seen lots of organisations running sort of promoting self-care, organising wellbeing sessions for their staff, putting it on the agenda at every meeting, whether it's tea and talk, introducing wellness action plans. People kind of having that light bulb moment that annual leave isn't just about getting your suntan on your holidays, but it's about the rest, the recharge and the relaxation. So lockdown kind of forced us to stay closer to home, but to take that time off. And I think we all value that time off. Discovering nature, being with our friends and family and connecting differently. So research from the Wellcome Trust Collective has really shown that there's a number of ways that people have coped and thrived. So the arts and creativity, family and friendships and relationships, green space. And we hope, I haven't interrogated that research, but I hope getting active in that green space has been part of that. Reflecting on the meaning of life and that the post-traumatic growth. So thinking about, you know, those bigger questions in life and what you want to do next and what's important to you. And so the general public have become more resilient during this time. So now more than ever, we need to be kind to ourselves and each other, you know, checking in with our friends and family and colleagues, starting simple by doing things that we enjoy or something that makes you smile every day, Well, sadly, I don't have lots of time to go into self-care techniques right now. There's so much online, from breathing techniques or exercises to challenge our faulty thinking, which we have. And the Every Mind Matters website is particularly helpful. But one thing I want to stress more than ever, that early intervention is key for everyone, but especially for young people. So moving on to sort of the link with physical activity, one area of self-care that's been particularly in the spotlight has been physical activity. So I think we might try to launch a poll now about physical activity. And I've just seen the poll about what resonates with you, so that's great. Hopefully this poll is launching. That's where I worry about the technology, guys. Fantastic. If you could just vote about how you feel about physical activity. So whether you find it enjoyable and satisfying, whether it's important to you to be active regularly, whether you feel guilty when you don't do it, whether you do it because you don't want to disappoint people, just to get a sense check of where you're all at. Okay. So the narrative around physical activity and mental health has grown like never before. We all know that getting active is good for our body, but the benefits are well researched now about how it benefits our mind, and you can see a number of them there. Yeah, I feel like everyone's doing my job for me, whether it's Boris, the Chief Medical Officer, Joe Wicks with his daily PE sessions. It's been in the law that it's the one thing that we can do during lockdown was to go outside and be active for an hour. The Join the Movement campaign, there's been so much positive conversation around getting active and sort of building on that research that's been there. Being active should be one of the first things that's prescribed to us when we present to the doctors with mild moderate depression. It's in the 5 ways to wellbeing as be active, so number 2, the second thing in there. So I think that message is really getting out there, that it's something that can help us to stay and live well. But as you can also see there from our research, that people with existing mental health problems told us that during the first lockdown, when they couldn't get active, it made their mental health worse because they weren't able to do the thing that they enjoyed. So it was a real problem to them. And great to see there was a real mix of people on the call that had sort of different feelings about being active. And I guess that's one of the things we really wanted to talk about today. We know it's brilliant for us, but it's really complicated, and you're going to hear that from our speakers, lived experience speakers, shortly. Physical activity is reported as a miracle cure due to the health benefits, but being active 5 times a week for 30 minutes isn't quite as simple as taking a pill. So when you're made to feel lazy because you're not getting out and helping yourself, when you're too unwell to leave the house, when you can't exercise at home because there's no space, maybe you're hoarding, when your self-esteem is rock bottom and you don't want to wake up tomorrow, when you're shielding and you can't get out, you can't get your food, you can't get your prescriptions, you can't get your support, when you've got no one to go with, when it says bring a friend, but that reminds you that you've got no one to take with you. Or at the opposite end of the spectrum, when exercise is the one thing that makes you feel good, so you do it at the expense of everything else. You do it when you're injured, when you've got no energy or fuel left, when the fun is gone, but you do it because it's a chore and you absolutely have to do it and you're over-exercising, when you feel like it's the one thing in your life that you've got control over. So it can be a cure and it can be hugely, hugely beneficial, but it can also feel like a bit of a curse, and the balance is what we need to achieve. So that's why right now I really wanted to stress it's about the balance of that message, about how physical activity can help us stay and live well, but we have to remember it's in the context of somebody's life. So it's not a one-size-fits-all solution. We can't underestimate the challenges that people are experiencing, but when we create the right conditions, so when it's welcoming, when it's a person-centered approach, so when we reflect the person's preferences, their values, their needs, when we're supportive and we focus on the social connections, when we make it fun, when we unlock that intrinsic motivation, so people are doing it because they enjoy it and they can see the value in it and see how it makes them feel, rather than how fast they go. So for all the coaches on the call, and I'm a coach myself, I'm a peer volunteer for a local mind, I have my own experiences. It's about how it makes people feel, not how far or fast. So it's about creating the right conditions so that people can put physical activity in their toolkit of support alongside other things, which may be medication, talking therapy, and peer support. So I really wanted to say, to really encourage people to think about the conditions that they create, but also to balance that message really carefully and help people to understand the barriers people are experiencing, treating people as individuals, and really meeting them where they're at. We need to tackle some of those entrenched inequalities that I talked about. So people experiencing poverty, Black, Asian and minority ethnic communities, the experiences of children and young people. So one of the ways we're doing this at Mind is we're supporting the We Are Undefeatable campaign, which many of you might be familiar with. So it's about working with people with long-term health conditions to meet them where they're at. So through the campaign, we partnered with Sport England and the Richmond group of charities. And it's really about being active in a way and a time that works for you, to support both physical and mental health. And the whole campaign has been shaped around people's experiences, tremendous insight work, lived experience stories. It's all about real experiences. So through the campaign, we provide resources people can access at home, in the community and online, whether it's a walk,
Can't find it,
movement in the house or garden. It's about working with people's good days. And through our local Minds, we're supporting people to get active through our Get Set to Go programme. So we're delivering in the heart of communities, whether that's our walking football or Zumba. We've been doing all sorts of things online resources to support people who are self-isolating. So we've popped materials out in care packages to give people sort of gentle hints and tips in their local area, challenges to get them active, and lots of content online at our website, so mind.org.uk/get active. But it's always in the context of someone's life stage and recovery. And we know that physical activity, particularly in green spaces, is a tool if we make it person-centred. So really thinking that benefits of getting out and online. Okay, so just wanted to signpost before I wrap up to a couple of resources that we've got available. So part of our role is to support the sports and physical activity sector to better understand mental health, so we can create more opportunities. So we launched recently some infographics with Believe Perform, which is all about return to play, and just this week we've launched them around signposting. Our training course has been designed with people with lived experience of mental health problems to really help coaches and providers to build their knowledge base about mental health, increase their confidence, to start those conversations, and most importantly, to help people to overcome the barriers. So it's been accessed by over 30,000 people during lockdown, and it's still available at a discounted rate. And finally, we've got a whole plethora of resources online. So really, our offer is growing, and we're here as an organisation to support you, to support people to be active. So 1 in 4 adults and 1 in 6 children, young people experience mental health problems. So whether you're running a discrete mental health project or not, you've got people in your organisation right now who are likely to be struggling with their mental health. So our ultimate aim is that we want to help the sports sector better understand mental health, and the physical and the mental health sector better understand the role of physical activity, and so that we can all use physical activity as a tool to stay and live well. And just want to bring you back really to the why, to sort of wrap up. Physical activity can change lives, but it's really important that we remember it in the context of that individual's life to ensure that we're person-centred. We are in the middle of a global pandemic, and it's going to have a lasting impact on us all. Therefore, we've got to tackle those inequalities head on. But to do that, we need to support ourselves. So self-care is incredibly important. So as a flight attendant says, we must put on our own oxygen mask first before helping others. So I'll just leave you with some signposting there, and I think we'll make these contacts available. If anyone is struggling with their mental health right now, you don't have to struggle alone. There is support out there for you. And thank you for having me.
Thank you very much indeed, Hayley. Very, very informative presentation with a huge amount of detail, some very concerning statistics in terms of how people have responded and are feeling during the pandemic, which is not surprising, but particularly worrying that people are concerned that they can't access the services perhaps that they need. And in particular, something I think lots of people, including myself, would be guilty of, or indeed seeking help from professionals that can really support you. On that point, Hayley, we did have one question that I wanted to draw upon just immediately before we go into the Q&A later. Somebody asking around advice and information for social prescribing around mental health services, in particular how to get referrals. Do you have any sort of thoughts or advice that you can offer on that?
How to get referrals into social prescribing or social prescribing is a huge opportunity and I think a huge challenge. I saw just yesterday UK Active and Sport England have announced a partnership around social prescribing. So I guess one of the challenges is obviously building those relationships with frontline professionals, and I don't think there's a hard or fast rule of how we do that. I think it's certainly connecting with link workers, and every organisation is slightly different. So certainly let them know who you are and what you have available. It's certainly a topic that we intend to do more out of mind over the next year, and I'm very happy to sort of follow up after today around other sort of tips and advice.
Wonderful. I think that would be really useful. There are a few people asking specifically around that. Thank you. And there's loads of other questions, but I'll come back to them at the end once we've heard from all of our speakers. For anybody, if you do have an issue with the screen freezing or anything, please just try and refresh your browser and we should be back to you in an instant. So apologies if you have experienced any problems there. Next up, we have Jess Cook. Now, Jess is the National Partnerships Advisor from Activity Alliance. Jess is going to be focusing more specifically on how the pandemic has affected people with a disability and their mental health. Now, we did run an inclusion diversity webinar a number of months ago now, and in particular, we know that people with a disability are less likely to participate in physical activity and sport for a host of reasons. So when you throw a pandemic into the mix, I can only imagine that situation worsens. So, Jess, over to you to give us the reality check, I guess, of how people with a disability are coping at the current time.
Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. Hopefully you can see the slides. My internet did just kick out, so I apologise if I disappear. It seems to be a bit funny today. But yeah, as Yvonne said, I'm going to take you through kind of a little bit more in depth to what Hayley's just done around how mental health and the pandemic has affected people with disabilities. So I just wanted to start and give you a bit of an idea of the organisation I work for. So I'm the National Partnership Advisor for Activity Alliance. We are a funded organisation by Sport England to ensure and support funded organisations by Sport England that to be inclusive to disabled people strategically, as well as developing work around being inclusive. So our purpose is making active lives possible and enabling organisations to support individuals to be more active and stay active for as long as they wish. We do this through a series of different ways. So through engagement, which is part of the role that I have. We've also got inclusive marketing and communication tips. We do a lot of research and insight, which is what I'm going to take you through in a minute. And I've just noticed the slides are doubled up. So additional to that, we do training and we also have advocacy and support mechanisms as well as programs. So we do some area around supporting others to do direct delivery. So what did we know before COVID started? Well, interestingly enough, for the first time in 4 years, the amount of disabled people being active had slightly increased. This was before the pandemic hit. We knew then that 1 in 5 disabled people have an impairment in the UK. That hasn't changed, but 8 out of 10 disabled people want to be more active. That hasn't changed either. Also, we know that disabled people are twice as likely to be physically inactive as non-disabled people. This has massively altered. We know that 2 in 3 disabled people would prefer to take part in sport with both disabled people and non-disabled people. Again, this hasn't changed, but there's now additional areas around it that you have to be aware of. And 3 in 5 disabled people say that they know about the opportunity, they don't know about the opportunity and or where it's taking place. And this prevents them from being active as well. So what impact has COVID had on disabled people and their ability to be active? Now, we've done some research and looked into some details around the ONS data, around stuff that Sport England have collected, as well as doing some surveys ourselves as an organisation. And we've looked into the wellbeing and health, the support that people have had, areas around shielding, finances, and obviously being active. Now, just to give you the bigger picture, disabled people are more likely to die from COVID. Sorry to start off with that, but it's the truth. We know that for every one non-disabled woman that dies, 11 disabled women die, and for every one disabled man that dies, 6.5 disabled men have died. So we know that disability has been disproportionately affected. Yesterday, I heard a stat around 55% of deaths that have happened from COVID have been from disabled people. So we know that there is a disproportionate effect on COVID around disability. We also know that disabled people have worried about the impact of COVID is going to have on their lives. Now, this has been through worrying about well-being, worrying about access to groceries. Disabled people were massively affected with the ability to get groceries and food. In 2020, why would we ever be thinking that people couldn't get access to food? But it actually became a reality in April. Disabled people that weren't shielding but were on lists for supermarkets were suddenly removed from priority lists in supermarkets because they were no longer came into the vulnerable category, even though they weren't able to go shopping themselves and get their food. We know that obviously there was a huge impact on people's health and well-being, and they were worried about how that was going to affect them moving forward. And there was also an effect on relationships as well. So people weren't able to socialise and see other people to be able to get their support mechanisms. So that has been a massive effect on loneliness and the overall ability of disabled people just feeling better about what's been happening. So we also know that 51% of disabled people no longer had care visits. Now, this is huge. The fact that somebody can no longer get the care that they need is just mind-boggling. There was a suspension of the Care Act in March, and a lot of local authorities then took it upon themselves to reduce or take away a lot of care that was given and a lot of support that was given to disabled people moving through. This also affected medical care as well. So disabled people were less able to get access to medical care. That has slightly increased, but it's again decreased again as we've gone into lockdown too. We know, following on from that there was a lot more disabled people shielding, whether they needed to or not. A lot of disabled people didn't feel comfortable with what was happening and the situation that we were being put in as a nation. So you can see from there that shielding massively across the population was quite high. It reduced over the summer months, but it has now increased again as there is a connection between colder weather and COVID. Disabled people are a lot more likely to be shielding and to be isolated because of that over the coming months and currently. So the impact on people's well-being and shielding and the support that has led to more people having anxiety because of COVID has been quite dramatic. Now, disabled people felt that their rights were being affected, that there wasn't enough information being given to them about COVID and about the additional support and about the additional support that they had being taken away. That has had a huge increase on people's anxiety. Now, there's been problems around people accessing healthcare, as I've said. They've had an opinion of feeling helplessness and forgotten. There's been a far higher rise in food security, which we never thought would happen before. As I said, there was a huge lack of PPE being available. And if you've got somebody coming into your house and supporting you directly, either physically by helping you get up in the morning or doing social care, personal care needs, or by coming into the house and cleaning for you, you still have that huge effect around PPE and feeling unsafe. And all of these things have accumulated into just a far higher rise in anxiety and people just being unsure of what was going on moving forward. Hayley's obviously taken us through the general population information, but I thought it was just important for you to see kind of how this has affected people moving forward, and that disabled people and people with long-term health conditions are equally as affected in this as others. So what has this meant for disabled people around physical activity? Now, in the beginning, there was a rise that disabled people were very much being active. They were doing as what everybody had said, kind of, we need to think about being active. We need to work out ways of doing that. And you can see that between the first lockdown we had and the second wave, there was an increase in disabled people being active, but that has now just decreased as things have gone through, as it has across the population. We also know that disabled people are less likely to have been active generally. So this could have been for a variety of reasons. 53% of disabled people felt that they had the opportunity to be active, but that was compared to 73% of non-disabled people. And half of those amount were worried about leaving their house. So all of the things around Joe Wicks coming out, they were all fantastic, but actually they weren't necessarily the thing that a disabled person could link into. And it was making sure that when all of the online emotion came through, that actually you were thinking about how you were going to deliver to a disabled person to support them to be more active. Now, within that, there's the additional areas around motivations, and we have seen that there's been a huge reduction in motivation since April, going through to the summer, and again since into August, around activity of disabled people. Now, we don't know whether that's because we think we know that is because the lockdown was there, everybody was in the same position. The summer came and activity started to open more, so there was less activity happening online. So disabled people had managed to find a way of being active online. They'd managed to set that into their work, their daily activities and their daily routines. But as the summer came and through into August, between August and October, there was a reduction in the amount of activity that was happening online. This has had an effect on disabled people now to being able to be active. They had been able to motivate themselves to be active online, but those opportunities were no longer available. So we have seen a reduction in the amount of people that have been active that way. COVID has also seen a barrier of people being able to be active as well. We know that through activity, people are more likely to use activity if they have a disability to support with their pain and to enable them to feel that they can use their the activity to support with their muscles, their strength, their ability to get up. And this has been a huge barrier, that people have found that they're more tired, that they're having more issues because of the worry about COVID, because of the issues around the pandemic and going out and not necessarily sure about where they should go. The fact that so many people are out walking, it might actually have been busier for people to be in that situation than it ever had beforehand. We do know that disabled people wanted to be more active after the lockdown, and it's really important to remember this, that everything that I've said to you, disabled people still want to be active. They still want to do that. So when activity is being put on, it's really important to remember how you are supporting those people that don't necessarily want to come to your activities directly. They are still as important as they were back in March, April, May time. But actually, how do you continue to support them to do this? Now, 69% of disabled people are telling us that they feel safer exercising at home. 67% are saying that they're worried about exercising close to people. Now, these two stats alone should be an indicator to enable you guys to think, actually, if we're going to open activity and get people to come to a locality, how can we still support those people that don't feel safe, that don't want to leave the house just yet? Even with the vaccine in the sights of people, we don't know what that's going to actually mean moving forward and who's going to be able to access that. So I think especially over the Christmas and over into the new year, we need to be thinking about how many different alternative formats can we have when we're delivering activity to enable that 69% that feel safer doing exercise at home and that 67% that actually worry about doing activity close to others. So I just wanted to finish off. We've got some examples of areas that have done some work around helping people to be more active in their locality. So I've got 3 for you at the moment. We've kind of taken a bit of a cross section of what's available and what's there. The first one I'm going to take you through is Geddington Bowls Club. They obviously, bowls work with a generally a higher and older population, and that population were told right at the beginning that they needed to shield, they needed to stay at home, they were separated from their families and their the grandchildren that might be involved, and obviously everything was stopped. When bowls opened, they were completely aware that there was members of their clubs that weren't going to be happy with coming back into the club, not really understanding what measure had been put in place, what it meant to be COVID safe. So they set up extra safe sessions to enable bowlers to come along, to know that there was only going to be a few people at each of these sessions, to get an idea of what measures had been put in place, to understand how changes have happened, and then let them transition over into the other activities that were happening and taking place. This enabled more people to come back quicker because they were putting these extra cautional extra safe sessions in for bowlers. The other example I'm going to take you through now is DS, a disability sports coach at home. This initially started in London, where they were sending out equipment to members of community clubs. They were providing bespoke activity cards that could be downloaded online. They were running Zoom activity sessions 4 times a week, including mindfulness and yoga, as well as sport and physical activity. They also run weekly sessions on for social aspects. These actually people found more enjoyable than the actual activity because they did feel isolated. Having that chit chat session and then having the ability to play games was possibly one thing that they hadn't had the opportunity to do before. But also they had gone back and connected with people. They'd made sure that there was a reduction in isolation. This had really supported people within the London community, and now that has moved over into a wider population across the country. So we're really seeing that by going to those extra measures has massively helped. Now, Get Out, Get Active is a programme that Activity Alliance run, and the reason I wanted to show you this was because it says here of alternative ways that people are getting and supporting others to be active. Now, I'm going to go a bit old schooly on you, and I'm going to mention the word telephone calls. Now, telephone calls are really important. Having that telephone call and speaking to somebody, talking to them about what they're doing, what we can support them with, how they can be and how they can stay active has been really important. There has been the slightly more modern area of weekly emails being sent out, but then we've gone back down to sending postcards to people with information about how they can do activity, just showing them little maps and suitable exercises that can be done for them at home. That has been really, really important. Having something come through the post has really supported them because there is still an element of unsure and not necessarily feeling comfortable about doing things online. And there's also been, again, a lot of areas done around social media, which we know, sharing exercises, suggesting online classes and activity and challenges. But also there's been equipment delivered to care homes. So the final thing that I just wanted to let you know about, Activity Alliance have got a quiz that they've no, they haven't, sorry, they've done an online event which was run live last week, and it's available as a recall on our website. please go and have a look at that. It kind of follows on from what I'm telling you about today, with disabled people themselves saying about what they wanted, what they need as far as being active. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Lots of information to cram in there, but incredibly useful. Again, some very worrying stats, particularly around people's well-being, obviously during this time, and highlighting the very real issues that people with a disability are facing right now in terms of fear of getting out and the shielding and so on and so forth. So I think there's a real challenge to the sector, actually, how we reimagine the opportunities and the propositions for people who are disabled, who perhaps feel less safe being out and exercising with other people and need to exercise more at home, taking on board some of the points that have been raised there. The other really interesting factor, and something definitely I would recommend people, follow up with the Activity Alliance, that 82% of people who took part in the poll felt that their organisation would benefit from further information on how to support people with a disability at the moment. So I think that's something, certainly there's lots of information out there, we're perhaps just not getting it to the right people, or people need to be a little bit more proactive in accessing that. So the Activity Alliance is an absolutely wonderful place to start. So I recommend people check them out on social media, and obviously certainly look back at the event that happened last week. We're just going to move on now quickly to our next speaker, Deborah. Deborah is an expert by experience, and is going to share very kindly her mental health and physical activity story with us, including the impact of COVID and her thoughts around physical activity and mental health services and how they can better support people at the moment. So Deborah, I'm really grateful that you're able to join us, and I'm going to pass over to yourself now.
Hello, my name's Deborah, and I want to talk to you today about the difficulties I've had throughout life, really, not just as a result of COVID, but in being able to be physically active. I've had severe mental health problems, all my life basically, and I know at the moment you hear a lot about physical activity and wellness, and people with mild to moderate mental health problems. And I wanted to say what a struggle it's been, and how physical activity for me is like something that's just totally unobtainable. I wanted to say today that it's not just a case of people not being motivated, people needing to eat less and move more. Believe you and me, if that was the case, I would have done that. But it's been a real struggle for me throughout life to be active. I have a lot of physical health problems, and I've struggled severely with my mental health, and I have autism as well. And I have desperately wanted to get some help, because I don't have anyone that I can, to help me to participate in things. I have a lot of health problems. For example, I have diabetes, and I joined a scheme which is supposed to be for people with mental health problems, long-term disabilities, who struggle to access physical health activities, and need to some help with that. And it was run by the local council, and you had to be referred. It was called an exercise referral scheme, and you needed to be referred by a health professional. My doctor referred me. And the challenge I had was actually getting out of the house, because I'm pretty housebound, and I really struggle to get out of the house. It feels to me like there's an invisible rubber band pulling me back in, and I feel uncomfortable, and I feel unsafe about being out. So I managed to get over that hurdle and get out, but I felt absolutely, terrified. And the first thing they do was, there was a male gym instructor, and he started weighing and measuring me and telling me like how overweight I am and how unfit I am, which was a real, I found that a challenge in itself. And then the next thing was they wrote a program for me, which they didn't share this program with me, but they actually emailed it across to the local gym. And then they said, you need to make an appointment and go and, like have an induction. And I went to this gym. I had an induction, and I couldn't keep up with everything. I found that the actual environment of the gym so challenging. It was noisy, there was loud music, and everyone who was in there didn't look like me. They looked fit. They looked, they were running on treadmills, on bikes, on weight machines, etc. It felt like an alien environment to me, and I felt totally out of place. And as I was going through this induction, I was out of breath, and I felt like I was going to, faint. And I was aware of this feeling of feeling like this isn't for me. I don't belong here. I'm the sort of person they don't want to be there. And then afterwards, I found that I couldn't actually go. I couldn't pluck up the courage to actually get inside this gym because I felt like they didn't want me there. And they'd actually shown me how to use the equipment, but it was very quick. And then I couldn't remember what to do. And then when I asked, again, what I needed to do, they said, they were like, well, we're busy, there was this guy doing reps with this, on these weights and things. And it was like, we're busy doing something else. And then eventually somebody looked at the program and they said, this program's a waste of time, but I suppose it's something. So I felt that they were, expecting and encouraging me to just give up. And I actually, in the end, they was telling me that they didn't think the program was right for me, even though it was for people who are not going to the gym. And that's been a facet of this. It's this feeling of the programs are always about bring a mate, come along, this girl can, be undefeatable, couch to 25k. They're all things that are it feels very unobtainable to me, and it feels that it's things that I would never in a million years be able to do. And this thing now about doing exercises in your house and stuff, it's like a lot depends on where you live and what your living conditions are. I mean, the way I live, I couldn't exercise in this house. I just haven't got the space. I've got a lot of difficulties in the home. I have a problem with hoarding, etc. So I wouldn't be able to be starting, doing exercise. And it's how coronavirus has affected me. It's like before this, I was not getting any help with my mental health. I was going round and round in circles, begging, pleading, please can somebody help me? And nobody wanted to know. And that in turn created more stress and more pressure. So for me, physical health is like the last thing on my mind. I don't care about my physical health. I feel like I'm crying out in pain, desperate for help for my mental health, and nobody wants to know. So when you hear about all things where they connect mental health and physical health, to me, it's all the things that I can't manage. They talk about mindfulness, they talk about going out and walks and things, going and doing things with other people. And if you're isolated and, desperate on your own, who is going to help you if you can't get out of the house? Who is going to help you if you're traumatized about going out? You've been through so many difficulties, and actually managing from day to day is a massive struggle, let alone be thinking about going, doing some, exercise. And as for the, coronavirus, before things were terrible, but then, like, I was on the shielding list, like certain people who've got what they call severe clinically vulnerable, they send you out at like a food parcel box, and you weren't to go out at all. And I did get this letter saying that I was on this clinically vulnerable list. and I got a box with some, a few tins of meatballs and some pasta. But then the box stopped coming. I couldn't get out to get shopping, and I couldn't get medication, and not only that, I was terrified about going out and about the virus. So, all those things became like overwhelming, and the effect on my mental health, I can't tell you how bad it was, and just not having anyone to speak to about being, how desperate you were feeling, and on top of that, things like if you've got physical health problems, you find that these are often they're treated separate to your physical health, to your mental health. So you'll go to the hospital, say with diabetes, and they'll say, well, you need to be getting active, you need to be losing weight, etc. But there's nothing then to address the barriers that are there that are preventing you from doing these things. It's just a case of you need to just go off and do it. And if you're struggling, like I am, when I get really depressed, I'm not sleeping. I'm getting up in the night. I'm eating things I shouldn't be, like chocolates and things, just because I've had such a bad night with night terrors and things. And then I'm in this vicious cycle of not being able to go out. I'm overeating, so I'm not getting the exercise. And then if I do try to get out, I'm coming back in because I feel unsafe to be out. Now, I realise there's a lot I could say, and I don't even know how long I've been talking for, so I really don't want to carry on talk, because I could literally, have loads of examples, but I just want to finish with these things. I mean, coronavirus has had a severe impact on a lot of people, and people for the first time and discovering, maybe the effect it's had on the mental health. And we talk about how this has led to a lot of people being depressed due to the tears that they're in, and the shielding, and not being able to meet up with people. But for people with long-term physical and mental health problems, that's been a reality long before that. And I can't begin to tell you how hard it is, especially in the certain areas like I'm in Greater Manchester, where there is no support whatsoever for your mental health. People think that you just go to your doctor and that's it. But the reality is, people like me are off-rolled and left to their own devices. And I've had no support for many, many years. I've just been left like this. So physical activity just isn't a priority when you're trying to stay alive. Even though physical activity may help you to stay alive longer, you actually, you don't care about yourself. And then the assumptions that everybody's got somebody to help them to do these things, to buddy up with, again, is not the case. And how to just finish on how physical activity providers could help. Not like the gym, where that was supposed to be somewhere that was helping people who were long-term health problems, mental health problems, etc. That approach wasn't good. To be just weighing and measuring somebody and telling them, well, you're too fat, you're too this, you're too the other, just you need to move more, eat less, is not helpful. In fact, it's actually counterproductive, because it actually makes you feel, the people you're telling that to probably feel really bad about themselves anyway, and it's not going to be helpful to somebody like me who already thinks of themselves as worthless. So that's not helpful. And other things is just trying to work with that person and maybe creatively see how they can help with those barriers. Like, it's not a one size fits all. I mean, when I went to the gym, when I went on this exercise referral scheme, they came up with a gym, and the gym was not the best place for me to be. but then it was like, well, it's the gym or nothing. Or things like high intensity exercise classes. If you've got a mental health problem that you don't want to go into a group situation like that, especially on your own. So I would say the tips I would give would be to try and think about how difficult it is for some people, and think about how people are often body shamed, for being overweight. And we hear about a lot of people who are very body shaming. I mean, even the government campaigns and the NHS, there'll be a picture of somebody's midriff saying, don't be a couch potato, try and eat well, move better, etc. And these things don't help people who have become really unwell. And I think to be mindful of the fact that people real struggle with their mental health are just not getting any support. So those are like some of the tips really that I'd like to share.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Deborah. I think I speak on behalf of, the 200 plus people who have listened to you talk. The honesty, how courageous you are, and how real and brutal a picture that you've painted, because actually it picks up on Hayley's point earlier, which is, and Jess, to be fair, we have to see people as an individual, and, life is complex. It's not just mental health. It's not just physical health. It's not just disabled people from BAME communities, women, every single person is an individual. And whilst, we may feel we have products and opportunities to support people, we actually, as a sector, perhaps need to listen more intently to how people are responding, feeling in those situations. I work out regularly and I don't like being weighed and measured, let me tell you. I absolutely empathise and understand what you're saying. I think there's a real workforce education piece, and I think your voice being heard by so many people, this overwhelming support for you in the chat group, for your bravery and sharing what you've shared with us today. So a huge thank you from us to you on that. I'm just going to move quickly on now, because we have another amazing speaker who's got some wonderful information to share about kind of a coping mechanism for her on the back of her own personal story. Rachel is joining us now, and she is the director of Mental Health Swim. She's going to focus on the growth of Mental Health Swim as part of a way that's helped her and other people with mental health challenges and issues to kind of manage alongside, quite rightly, as Deborah said, alongside other support, whether that's medication, whether that's therapy, and a whole range of other things. So Rachel, I don't want to steal any of your thunder. I'm going to pass straight across to you now. Thank you.
Hello. I am not a natural public speaker, so I'm a little bit nervous. Hold on, I'm just going to get my slide up. Can you see the slides, Yvonne?
Sorry, yes, I can see them now.
Thank you. So I'm certainly really inspired by all the people who spoke today, and it makes me want to go away and make mental health swims as accessible and diverse as possible. So thank you. You've really inspired me. I'm Rachel Ash. I'm the founder of Mental Health Swims, which is a social enterprise that celebrates the healing power of cold water and community. If someone had told me a year ago that I would have founded a social enterprise and then be talking about it in a webinar, there was absolutely no way I would have believed them. So I'm going to go right back to the beginning and explain how I ended up with my own mental illness diagnosis. So when I was a little person, I was adopted, and I'm the only brown person in my whole family, which meant I always felt like I never really fitted in anywhere. Possibly it was bad luck, or maybe because of that, not feeling like I fitted in, I was quite vulnerable. I was always eager to please. I wanted everyone to like me. And I think that's not fair, though, to put on myself, because it wasn't my fault. It's something I always have to tell myself. But I was sexually abused by multiple people, multiple times throughout my whole childhood, which meant I realized that people are not always what they seem, and that there is this dark undercurrent to life. And I had this really strange way of kind of living one life, but also knowing underneath there was a more sinister side, I suppose. The way that I have coped with that, well, not even the way I've coped, but the way my mind has coped, was to dissociate. So dissociation for me meant that I have these big black holes in my memory where I just can't remember what happened. This is part of my diagnosis, and it's something that has made my life really, really difficult. Trying to remember things, finding that I'm remembering stuff, but it feels as though I'm hungover and I can't be quite sure if that was the reality or not. So in 2018, I finally got a diagnosis, and I was diagnosed with emotionally unstable personality disorder, which used to be called borderline personality disorder, which is basically, I think it was like a rebrand, because when my psychiatrist told me what my diagnosis was, she also gave me a warning that it's highly stigmatized, even amongst medical professionals, which didn't help the feelings of not fitting in anywhere. I also have PTSD. I have like traits of avoidant personality disorder. I have depression and anxiety too, which was not great, shall we say. I really didn't think I would ever be okay, even-ish. So yeah, in 2019, on New Year's Day, I was staying at my parents', and it wasn't that long after getting my diagnosis. So I was trying out some medication, and the medication, the side effects were awful. So I was taking sedatives in the day to try and cope with those side effects. And at night, I was taking sleeping pills to deal with insomnia and trauma nightmares. It was not the best of times, but something, I don't know what, made me want to go and join the Looney Duke, which is a swim in Edinburgh on New Year's Day, where hundreds of people run into the sea, and then they come back out and they like stand around a bonfire warming up. And I was really scared. I was really paranoid at the time. And I was really worried that if I went on the beach, maybe like shock horror, someone might try and talk to me, or like people would look at me and think I'm weird. All of these kind of thoughts were going through my head, but I still did it. Who knows why? I ran into the sea, and I was probably only there for maybe a minute. But when I came out, I felt this incredible feeling of calm that I hadn't felt ever, maybe in my entire life, which was a great feeling. And it is not, I have to say this now, it's not the cure. I still take medication. I often see a therapist. I have to keep doing that. That's something I have to do to look after myself. So, yes, brain, give me a second. I have limes here because I sometimes zone out. Hold on. So, let me see. When I started therapy last year, I started therapy with an amazing therapist who does cognitive analytical therapy. And through that, I decided that I wanted to be as kind to myself as I am to my children. I wanted to be a kind mother to myself, I suppose. And part of that was taking that day on the beach when I swam in the sea for the first time in the cold. I had swum in the sea before, but I decided that I would go into the sea every month that year, and it did some incredible things to me. I found that in a time of year when I normally would be at home grey with depression, that I could get out and be outside, and suddenly the big world didn't feel so scary anymore. I found myself trying to go to all these different swim spots, and I started meeting people. And for someone who used to practice having to be brave on dog walks in case someone stopped and wanted to talk to me, I suddenly found that I could have little chit chats with people while I was getting changed and while I was in the sea. There's like, I don't know, I find it easier, I think. So yeah, I think, yeah, it made life easier, and inspired me to start Mental Health Swims, which in September 2019, we had our first ever swim. I just put it out on social media. I didn't really know if anyone would actually come, and 30 people joined us that day, and it was so good, even though I was absolutely terrified, a bit like today. But it was great, and we did it once a month until we got to lockdown. It was really amazing. We invite people to come along as they are, however they're feeling. You don't even need to actually get in the water. You could just have a paddle or a little splash in the waves, or you can join us for a litter pick afterwards. We want to make these spaces a safe place for people, no matter how they're feeling. So now we have, I think, so through lockdown, we had, give me a second, we had Zoom swims all the way through lockdown, which was great because I certainly found my own mental health took a massive nosedive. I found that I was seeing things again, that I was hugely paranoid without my routine. I had I felt a lot of safety in my routine, I suppose, and without it, I felt lost. And looking after my children all day, every day was hard. I hate saying that because it feels kind of shameful, but it was really tough. It was really tough. So the Zoom swims are a great way of checking in once a week. And then I don't know how it really happened, but suddenly we went from having one swim to now we have 60 swims across the whole of the UK. And we have one in Australia too. And we were really, really trying to create a diverse and welcoming community for people that want to come and be who they are as they are without having to mask their feelings. Yeah, I'm just trying to look at my little notes here, which actually don't make very much sense. Let's see. So yeah, so wild swimming this year has grown in popularity. I think there is a 300% increase in people wild swimming, which is amazing. And we want to do it as safely as possible. So we are now trying to get funding so that we can train our swim hosts to have mental health first aid training. They're also going to get online water safety training. And we want to have regional coaches across the whole of the UK doing free introductions for people struggling with their own mental health, so that they can come along and get a free introduction into how to safely join one of our peer support groups. Let's see, I think I have one more slide. So how can you help? We are a growing family of people. You don't even need to get wet to come and join us and help us. You might have know some people who could do free transport to swims for people who can't afford to get to them, because I don't drive. I can't drive because of my dissociation. but some people can't get on public transport to these places. So maybe you know a transport place, maybe you want to become a swim host for us, maybe you want to come and help with the admin. There's so many things you can do. But if you want to follow us on Instagram, you can find out more about us. I think that's me, Yvonne.
Wonderful, absolutely wonderful. And again, so honest, and to use your word, brave, actually. You know, it's interesting, we take for granted almost. I'm a bit of a chatterbox for those that know me. You know, and talking to people sort of just comes naturally, but it doesn't for everybody. So the way that you've been able to overcome that anxiety and that fear, and use kind of swimming as that hook and that sort of safe space to be able to talk to people, even just, you know, a little bit of chit chat is actually incredible. And much like the response to Deborah on the chat, it's amazing. It's making me feel quite emotional, actually, because you've both been so incredibly honest, and sometimes you don't see that. And I think what we wanted to do at Y Sports is to create a very honest picture, and also provide some expertise and support for people in terms of signposting and the talks from Hayley and Jess. But it's been so emotive and so powerful, and just telling your story like that is incredible. And for somebody who doesn't think they're good at public speaking, let me tell you, you did an incredible job, really authentic and fantastic. And, you know, I know everybody that's on the chat is feeling the same. Good news is, as well, what's interesting, looking at the poll, nearly a quarter of the people that are on the webinar have taken part and do regularly do outdoor wild swimming, which is amazing. And close to 40% of people would like to try. So I think, you know, you're growing quickly with over 60 swims across the UK, and I think that could easily go up with the number of people. So maybe there's a challenge to people here. Get following on social media, find out where your local swim is. And I think a really important message that you said there as well, Rachel, is learn to do it safely, because equally the shock of the water. A friend of mine who works at Greater Sport, she does outdoor swimming, and I see her in December cracking the ice, and it blows my mind. I'm just like, how on earth? And I'm one of them that's like, no way. But maybe, just maybe, you've shifted me now to think that maybe I should have a go, and never in my wildest dreams did I think I hate being cold. Did I think I would say that, but I feel like I have to kind of step up and do that. So I will. Oh my God. I've just said that to several hundred people, so I'm going to have to do that. But no, it's amazing. And you've given us great ways to get involved as well, whether that's helping people with transport, whether that's just kind of advocating and promoting, whether that's getting down and in the water, like some of us have just committed to do. So really massive thank you for that. I'm very conscious that our time is coming to an end. Unfortunately, we don't have time for further questions, I'm afraid, because what I didn't want to do was cut off our speakers, because the response to them was incredibly powerful. I just want to say a massive thank you to everybody that's joined us today. You've really been fantastic, attentive listeners, and the chat has been incredible. As we mentioned, all the slides are available. This webinar is recorded, so you can come back to it at a further point. There's some fantastic resources that have been shared by our speakers, which is great. And again, you can refer to them. I want to say a massive thank you to Hayley, Jess, Deborah, and Rachel. You've inspired us, you've supported us, you've provided us with you know, quite worrying statistics, but also some incredible resources and support that's there for everybody. That message, you know, don't ever think you're not unwell enough. If you feel not yourself, if you feel you need that support, then please do try, you know, and get that support for yourself, or talk to somebody who might be able to help you. The honesty has been brilliant. We are going to be doing a series of mental health webinars. This is the first one kicking off, and we're going to be looking specifically around social media and the effects on our mental health. And we're also going to be looking at children and young people and the effects of their mental health. We saw some of the statistics, 1 in 6 young people suffering with mental health conditions currently. So please check out Y Sports social media for more information on that. And we look forward to you joining us next time. A massive thank you again on behalf of the Y Sports team, and thank you to our speakers. Do take care and stay safe.